Radical collaboration. Sorry. How to dismantle organizational walls and supercharge what you achieve.
When I was 18, I got into an abusive relationship. At that time, we as a society had really not a lot of language for coercive control and financial and emotional abuse, so I actually didn't even know that's what it was. Getting out of the relationship was extremely painful, but it was also extremely expensive. The legal bills alone cost me almost $60,000, and I was 23. Aside from a lot of trauma, what the relationship did give me was an incredibly important lesson that I've kept to this day, and that is the importance of freedom money, the importance of having money set aside to be able to escape any bad situation, whether it's a bad relationship, a bad workplace, or even just a holiday from hell.
I come from a very patriarchal society, from a small place in India called Mizoram. My family was very poor when we were kids, and my parents weren't great with money. And my relationship with money was that it was the root cause of many evils. When I was 17, my mom gave me a bag of cash and said to me that I had to leave home and not come back until I made something of myself. I'd never seen so much money in my life. I don't know where she got the money from, I never asked. But when I saw that bag, I felt like I could do anything. So I guarded this with my bag. I did with my life. And money became a matter of survival for me. So with this money, I went to Bombay, I moved there, I lived there, I studied there. And I did a whole bunch of jobs, and including this job where I had to drive this lady around the slums and city of Bombay, or Mumbai, with the car boot full of cash and jewelry. I think she must have been part of a slum mafia or something. It was crazy times for me. I didn't get to see my parents again until I could afford to fly back home, and it took me 3 years. But that one money moment with my mom changed my life. It led me down this path where I could control my income and have the freedom to do what I wanted.
Money is a very scary topic, and for a lot of us, it's a deeply personal one.
Our personal money stories and the stories of hundreds of New Zealanders that we spoke to are what brought us here today.
Too often these stories are stories of deep shame, fear, and embarrassment.
And these stories were also the inspiration behind how we thought we could change the way we thought about money, to turn it on its head, to grow the wealth of New Zealanders.
Growing the wealth of New Zealanders became our North Star. It became our vision. For us, it was never about super yachts and fast cars. It was about equipping everyday people with the confidence and ability to live their lives on their terms.
Wait. Sorry, bad timing. Hatch. Hatch is an investing platform that we started because of these stories, our North Star. Our North Star was also the motivation behind completely changing the way we worked, the way we designed and delivered experiences.
Radical collaboration. When you live and breathe your North Star.
It was 3 days before lockdown in 2020. I'd just come back from school with the kids, picked them up, and was wondering whether the school was going to go into full lockdown mode or not.
The world was going into full lockdown, and at Hatch, sign-ups were rocketing up. At this stage, we were still a tiny team of just 10 people, and I was a one-person product, design, and UX team charged with transforming Hatch virtually overnight from a baby startup into a platform that could operate at scale.
Nat called me up out of the blue. I was juggling a few projects at the time, and I asked her, when do you need me? She just yelled over the phone and said, now, please, like yesterday, ASAP.
Yep. We had that incredible momentum that most startups only dream of. But remember our North Star. We weren't here just to grow a big business. We were here to change the world.
And the choices we made then was either going to lead a whole new generation to embrace investing as a way to grow their wealth and lead the lives they wanted,
or cause them to make mistakes, lose their confidence, and give up on investing forever.
That's right. So Nat sent me all her work, her product design work, all her research documents, shared me all the things, and said, rip it apart, challenge everything, question everything. And so I did. And at times I was worried what she would think about what I was doing to them, but there was never any question. We believed in our North Star so strongly that we'd really trusted each other.
Radical collaboration. When you trust each other so much, you're happy to give up control.
I was in between back-to-back meetings when suddenly I heard someone singing happy birthday to themselves.
I think that was the first time someone had actually sung to us, but it was definitely not the first time we'd had a very emotional call with a customer.
We loved hearing stories from our investors. We loved to cry. We loved to celebrate.
And Hatchiversary calls were a way to do both. Every year when a willing investor ticked over another year of investing with us, one of our team would give them a call just to chat about how things were going.
And through these calls, we heard so many more new money stories.
Women who'd started investing for the first time and were talking about it openly with their friends. We had EV lovers who'd sold their Tesla shares to buy a Tesla. We had adventurers who'd given up work and taken 6 months off to travel. We had employees who'd become business owners. And our favourite, we had lovebirds who'd bought engagement rings.
Yep, I love that one. I remember talking to that person. And people from across Hatch participated in these calls. We all took the calls. Our designers, our writers, customer support, of course, our engineers, and even our CEO. We all took part in these calls, and some of us were quite nervous at the start, picking up the phone.
Yeah, and it's really important to remember that it actually takes a lot of courage to pick up the phone and call a stranger without an agenda, come face to face with the impact you've had on their lives, and be prepared to answer any question they might have about any part of your business. And Hatch was an extremely complicated business.
At Hatch, everyone's role went far beyond our job descriptions. We all took part in these calls. We became researchers. We all researched together. We became analysts and even legal experts.
By forcing ourselves out of our comfort zones, we were all able to see the whole picture, not just our little pieces of it.
Radical collaboration, when everyone wears all the hats. So
they say there's two things in life that are certain: death and taxes.
And in an increasingly competitive industry, you are pressured to and very tempted to create and build new and exciting features all the time, or very often. And for us, there was unique and new investments, a smoother, faster, more polished buying and selling process, the low-hanging fruits, the quick wins, those glossy and beautiful designs that are fun to work on.
Anyone who's worked on an app or at a startup will know it's extremely easy to correlate more features with growth, but it's a lot harder to take a step back and remember that our role is to deeply understand our customers' problems and to solve them, not just add more stuff to their lives.
And our customers, they were struggling with tax.
And when it comes to investing overseas, you're dealing with a notoriously complicated tax situation. For most of our investors, just calculating how much tax they had to pay could cost them around $2,000 a year.
And many of the accountants, and we spoke to quite a lot of them, they didn't do them because it could get quite stressful and very complex.
So the first year we did what we thought was the sensible option. We partnered with a big tax firm. It was a nightmare. There were spreadsheets, uncertainty, and stress everywhere, and right up until the deadline, we weren't actually sure that we were going to be able to deliver the tax reports we'd well and truly already promised our customers. So the second year, we decided to do it ourselves. So with no tax experts in the Hatch team, and very little access to any, we put a team together.
And with a very tight 3-month deadline, we managed to deliver a comprehensive international tax solution. Our solution enabled our customers to be able to determine what tax regime they fell under. We delivered two different tax calculations, and these beautiful reports that people were actually able to read and understand.
The first time any actual tax experts were able to look at our solution was right up on the deadline, when our solution was almost complete. And they found almost no flaws.
And that end-to-end experience was delivered by our designers, product owners, writers, and customer support.
Anyone who's an accountant will understand that this work is extremely boring, complicated, and often very frustrating. We had to deal with, it feels like, about 1 million edge cases, and every single person in the team had to literally get down into the nitty-gritty of international tax law.
And I can confirm after that experience, everyone still hates tax.
Radical collaboration.
1 sec.
When you do what's right,
Just a sec.
not what's glam.
Sorry.
We'll try and get them out.
There it goes. Woo! All right.
Switch to the next one.
Next one. Sorry.
It's not liking us.
Yeah. All right.
There we go.
Did you guys know that in 2019, only 20% of New Zealanders had ever invested in shares?
Our early adopters were these people. They were so excited to finally get affordable access to the US share markets, they'd bust through almost any barrier to get access. They didn't need any education, they didn't need any motivation, they weren't at all afraid, they just got stuck in.
But about a year in, we started to get a new crowd of people joining us. First-time investors. These were people who thought that investing was for Wall Street finance bros, was all about maths and risk, and even some thought gambling. They were petrified. They felt like they didn't belong. They were scared of losing money and making mistakes. So we'd just given them just enough confidence. Oh, see, it happens. Anyway, we had just given them just enough confidence. Maybe it goes back. There you go. Just enough confidence to back themselves and take that first step to invest.
At the same time, Hatch was going through some big-time growing pains. At this point, we were a team of 20 and we were still hiring madly, and despite all our best intentions, silos were cropping up all across the business.
And here we were, trying to introduce almost the whole country to investing as a way to build wealth, to grow wealth and lead the lives they want to lead. And we really needed our team to focus on the problems that our customers were facing, especially our first-time investors.
Apart from being incredibly talented and highly skilled, these new team members also brought with them what we call professional baggage. They'd come from organisations that had celebrated individual contributions, so when they arrived, they thought the best way to immediately add value, and every single one of them wanted to add immediate value, was by creating these outputs that would impress us and each other.
We needed to change our collective mindset from working alone, figuring out what we wanted internally, to working together to figure out what our customers needed.
So we went slow to go fast. We stopped everyone delivering stuff and took a big step back.
We painted a picture of what our customers went through as they made their way into making their first investments. We took a lot of time and space. We had lots of sessions where we discovered and learned together the barriers and problems that our customers were facing to make their first investments. And so the more we did this, the more we learned and really appreciated and understood and really cared about solving these problems.
And once everyone deeply understood their problems, and only when everyone deeply understood their problems, we as a team came up with a solution, broke down the work, and delivered a comprehensive onboarding solution that increased our conversion rate by 10%.
I think it's forcing us to go slow. Radical collaboration, when you own the outcome, not the output.
Has anyone here ever owned a pair of Allbirds? Yeah, a
No,
few people.
no.
Quite a few
It's
people.
still cool. Yeah. Well, I did. They're an exceptional Kiwi success story.
And in 2021, Allbirds reached an incredible milestone. They listed their business on the New York Stock Exchange in an event called an initial public offering, or an IPO.
It's a huge deal.
It is a huge deal, and it was even a bigger deal for us because they wanted to work with us to enable Kiwi investors to participate. Alongside these massive institutional investors, our Kiwi investors would be able to buy shares at the same time rather than being forced to wait until the shares became publicly available.
This was also a New Zealand first. It had never been done here before.
So of course we were like, absolutely, yeah, sure, count us in.
And boy, what a roller coaster that was. And if you thought international tax law is complex, try figuring out how to navigate around international IPO law. Word mouthful.
Firstly, you're operating without a deadline. When you do an IPO, no one announces when it's actually going to happen, even to the people they're working with, until about 1 week before.
And secondly, you're not allowed to tell anyone, which meant that we couldn't prep or educate our customers about this. We couldn't tell anyone.
Thirdly, it turns out that US lawyers and regulators don't actually give a damn about New Zealand, let alone our investors. And their laws aren't set up to make this stuff very easy.
Yep, these are all the things we found out and discovered while we were putting hundreds of hours into this project.
No, we didn't have any international IPO experts on hand.
We thought we'd hit an unmovable wall so many times in this project, probably 3 times.
At least 3 times. And every time it felt impossible, we'd put it to the team and ask, is this time to give up?
And every time the team said, no, let's keep going, let's keep moving.
Everyone at Hatch did what they needed to do to make this IPO happen, from manually processing orders to staying up late to talk to global brokers. They set aside their job titles and mucked in.
And when Allbirds IPO'd, New Zealanders were some of the few everyday investors around the world who were able to participate in this opportunity.
And thousands of them did. Just under 4 years after we launched, we'd smashed through yet another massive barrier in the path to building wealth.
Radical collaboration, when you're relentlessly committed to making it work.
Radical collaboration.
How to dismantle organizational walls and supercharge what you achieve.
When you live and breathe your North Star.
When you trust each other so much, you're willing to give up control.
When everybody wears all the hats.
When you do what's right, not what's glam.
When you all own the outcome, not just your output.
And when you're relentlessly committed to making it work.
Radical collaboration changed our people.
We came to see ourselves as much more than technical experts. We grew our skill sets, our confidence, and really appreciated every moving part of the business and each other.
We got comfortable being uncomfortable. We made a lot of mistakes, and we learned the best way out of them was relying on each other.
We grew the unbreakable bonds of people who came together to achieve something bigger than ourselves, bigger than the sum of its parts.
Radical collaboration changed the way we do business.
Information was no longer held in the minds of a few. It was shared. We were able to sub people in and out of projects seamlessly. We were able to actually take time off and holidays with little stress and time spent on handovers.
We achieved far bigger results with far fewer features by instead focusing on the end-to-end experience.
We moved faster. We were able to almost anticipate or remove unexpected problems that when work flowed from discovery to design to delivery and to promotion.
Radical collaboration changed New Zealand.
We saw a 50% jump in the number of people in this country who'd ever invested in shares. And for the first time, people had more money in shares than they did in term deposits.
180,000 people joined Hatch in the first 4 years, and collectively they invested $1 billion.
We rebranded wealth as a way to take control and live your life on your terms.
So we'd like to challenge you all today to take one small step in the next week.
Go hang out with your customer support team. Pick up the phone and call a customer. Talk to someone that you've actually had an impact on.
The next time you see one of those awful embedded design patterns, like my favourite, the stupid terms and conditions checkbox, put your hand up and ask if that's actually the right thing to do.
And please send us your critical feedback for this talk so we can improve.
We've picked our next big problem, but the world is facing quite a lot of them right now. It's time to get radical about how we work together to solve them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, we're turned off. Oh, no, we're back on. Sounds like we have about 20 minutes left to the break, so we will open the floor to questions. If anyone has a question for us, I think pop up your hand. If you don't,
that's fine too.
We will happily sit there. We've actually
got a few from Slack.
Oh.
So I'll just pop up in the speaker channel. So from Shan, how do you not go crazy when dealing with a million edge cases? This is a serious question. How do you stay sane and manage the cognitive load?
That's probably a question better answered by one of our engineers, AJ, who over 2 years became probably one of New Zealand's greatest tax experts. I think it actually did come down to teamwork. I think at Hatch we had a really strong philosophy of laughing through the pain. So when you're all in something together like that, it doesn't actually matter how hard it is and how scrappy it is. The fact that you can all hang out, have a beer afterwards or during, and have a bit of a laugh about what a cluster things are, has a lot of impact.
Thank you, AJ, if you're watching. Oh,
any more?
Someone put their hand up.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Your personal story at the beginning about the abusive relationship you were in, I was curious, what safeguards did you end up putting into the product to help ensure that
Great question.
same similar situations can happen to other vulnerable people?
That's a good question. Based on my relationship, what did I learn and what do we put into the product to put safeguards up? One of the great things about New Zealand regulation these days is the finance industry is extremely well regulated. Mm-hmm. It's very different from it was even pre the global financial crisis. So things like having joint accounts, we actually didn't launch joint accounts because what most people don't realise if you have a joint bank account is that both of you equally have full control over that bank account. So you don't have 50-50 split. One of you can take out 100% of the money at any time. So we were very careful before we launched anything to look through all the ramifications and put in place any education we needed to put in place. We obviously had heaps of security in place. We had huge amounts of education. What we realised, as probably everyone in the room knows, is there's actually no mechanical reason why people aren't investing a lot anymore. The transaction is as easy as buying a pair of shoes online. Everything about investing is about the psychological reasons, the psychological barriers. So for us, it was all about empowerment and confidence and really spreading the word that this investing and wealth building is about living your life on your terms, and a lot of that was actually dealing with confidence and talking to people about money and relationships. We were shocked, I think quite early on, we interviewed lots of women to find that many of them who were married had handed over complete financial reins to their partner because they thought they weren't good enough. And when they sort of started to challenge themselves and recognise that actually they had all the same skills, they could actually step up.
Some
that
of
was
them
the
even
path
more,
in.
right? Yeah, some of them had even more practical experiences.
Absolutely.
That, yeah.
So we have all the AML, all the ID stuff, but actually what we found is it's about building a community, building that confidence, and really opening up those conversations.
And I just wanted to add something small in the scheme of things. From a UI level, we also harped on a lot about where to put the right type of friction where. And the content, that's why we worked so closely together, was making sure that there was education that was not in your face, but also let you feel confident every step of the way. We didn't want people to suddenly just click that button because it's easy, because the price is suddenly a good price right now, do it. We wanted to make sure every step you had to really think about what you're doing.
And that's actually a really important point, because we stayed at Hatch for 4 years. That is by no means a long enough time for people to be able to build wealth. What they did build is a lot of confidence and got started. Wealth building is a 10 to 20 year endeavour. And so every decision we made, we were thinking 20, 50 years ahead and saying, what are we putting in place today? Even if it was a short-term sacrifice, it would have been a lot easier to gamify trading. That's what they call it, quick buying and selling of shares. We deliberately put friction in that process because we were thinking, what can we do today that's going to make someone think twice before making a decision that's going to put them off and set them up, though in 10, 20 years' time, we could have a customer base that were all independently wealthy. How do you stop yourself adding more stuff to the product? What was the second part?
How do you let things get in?
How do you let things get in?
How do you actually...
I mean, that's actually really easy. And I think a few people have talked about it today.
Yes.
You focus on your customers. That was just the fundamental. Hatch started literally as a blank sheet of paper. We did not go in. We weren't sort of the founders that would have a problem necessarily that we were trying to solve and just built something. We literally started with a blank sheet of paper and interviewed probably 200 New Zealanders and tried to get an understanding of the money problems they were facing. So everything went back to our customers, and every decision we made, we just, I think they call them experience principles these days. I didn't know that.
These days.
So we were just so clear on recognize the intelligence of our customers, even if they weren't educated on this subject, speak in plain English. What were the things that our customers needed at any time? What were the things that were actually things that were internally focused that we wanted to do? And they'd all get scrapped. And it was only ever about, could we point to and measure? We had very strong measurements in
remember we
place.
had that little flow charty thing that we used to mentally think about. Does the business want this? Yes. But can we actually build this? No, then we don't. And then we kind of go through this. And finally, the main question was always, if by changing this, will it freak out or piss our customers off? If it's a yes, then we just go no. So it was a simple logic, but we all kind of lived and breathed that. So we knew it quite intimately.
Yeah, well, I think Andy's listening today, but he had a great example of, we rebranded, and so we changed our buttons to be purple, which in the normal world feels like not that big a deal, but we had such a strong relationship with our customers, and we were very aware that that purple button might feel like a betrayal, because we went through an acquisition, and so for about 6 months we hadn't been able to release really anything major. And we knew, because we knew our customers so well, that releasing a purple button would show that we cared more about making our app look pretty than we did about solving their problems. So what Andy did was write a really, he's a designer, he wrote a really beautiful blog post explaining why we were making our buttons purple and what that meant for what we were trying to achieve. It was setting up the foundations, and so we had that two-way conversation with our customers. So everything always went back to our customers, and how could we stand in front of them and say we were legitimately solving one of their problems.
And for the designers in the room, what we were setting up at that time, and Natalie said foundation, we were actually putting in our new design system in place. And that button was the very first product of our design system. So internally we were so happy, but we also knew that there was this big looming potential, people going, why did you change a button when we need all these other things? So yeah. Oh, the phone calls.
Great question.
What a great question.
She'd like to know how we went about making the phone calls to customers, how we picked them, how did we know what questions to ask, and how did that all work? They actually started on day one. I'm answering all the questions.
No, you do it. No, it was your luck child. That one was your personal.
They started on day negative 100. foundational was we talk to customers. And so as in very early stage, like we talked about when we were a 10-person team, when we went into that first lockdown, the CEO of the company, Kristen, and I were literally on customer support for 8 hours a day alongside our customer success team. And then we were also trying to figure out the product, the strategy, the PR, everything else in our spare time. We didn't actually know that we were in lockdown. We were working 24/7. And so we just always had this incredibly huge respect for our customers, and we were so close to them. We knew them inside out. A lot of them are still friends with us. Like, I still talk to a lot of our customers. So it just made so much sense to call them regularly. And we were very much about celebrating, as Lulu said. So one of the coolest things when you're investing, you're dealing with a thing that can take 20 years to come to fruition. And if you're anything like us or our customers, we very much like a quick feedback loop and quick moments of delight. So we tried to find ways that we could take that delight away from selling shares and that instant hit, which is not actually good investing behaviour, into what surrounding things could we offer that gave you that hit. And one of them was calling people. So every year on their anniversary, we'd send them an email first and say, we'd love to chat. And you'd actually be amazed how many customers, A, were shocked that we'd even reached out to them. Like, that is the standard of service they're used to, that people don't actually want to talk to them. And then we'd ring them deliberately without a script, which is why Lulu said it was scary, because you were picking up the phone and calling someone, and you actually don't know if they hate it, if they love it. You know they're probably going to have a strong opinion. What we found, sometimes people were angry, sometimes something had happened, but by the end, they would commit to spending at least the next 5 years with us because a human had called them to have a conversation, again, without an agenda. We just listened. We listened to them as humans, and we had a great chat. It actually was like a bit addictive. You get kind of a high afterwards. And the first time people would do it, they'd be so nervous because you had to talk about shorting shares. People had like a lot of our initial investors had all this language that they knew that a lot of our team weren't expert investors, so they were so intimidated. But because our rule was talk in plain English, talk in a way that everyone could understand, they came out fizzing, and then everyone queued up to do more.
Yeah, it was. I think the one with for me was the high was not the first one who sang "Happy Birthday" to me, and I was so nervous calling her, but she suddenly sang "Happy Birthday" to me, and I'm like, wait. Am I supposed to sing along? Is it what's happening? And she said, no, I just love it so much. And you feel this huge thing come off you. And then the other one was this lady, she was about to close her account. And she said, oh, actually, then I won't. I'll just leave it there. It's okay. And I was like, wait, did I just give her advice? Was I allowed to give advice? But she wasn't. She just needed to talk to someone. And that was the encouragement we gave the team, was people, more often than not, we have a big spreadsheet. We were just about to move into something a bit more smarter. But the theme was that a lot of people really just wanted to talk to you, because it was really hard to talk to people about money, about investing, about those things that you don't really talk to your friend about, or you're making a stupid mistake, or the company you've chosen might not be someone else's choice. So by talking to us, I think there was a little bit of a safe space, and there was no judgment from our end, and we were always, trying to be really happy over the phone. But if there's anything technical that we didn't know, the only sort of script we would have was to make sure that we say, can we please follow up with you and let someone from our customer support call you about this specific thing. And at least in my experience, I hardly had anyone who had to do that at the end. They were always very happy, and I was always happy.
And I think that's a really good point. You don't actually have to know all the answers. And the final thing on that, we talk a lot about radical collaboration in our team. You can tell we feel very passionately about this. But radical collaboration actually extended to our customers. They were part of our team from day one. We had a Facebook group where we'd be sharing stuff with them. And even to this day, I feel like they're our biggest cheerleaders, and people will still contact me being like, how's everything going for you? Because we'd never built an investing company before. So they really were on our team, and they were supporting us as much as we were supporting them.
Cool, we'll just do one more question.
You talk about talking or calling people and put yourself in a situation where you're one-on-one with that person. We also hear about building working groups and putting people into groups and understanding what their feedback is, but as a group. Have you ever done that, and are there differences between actually calling them one-on-one or putting them in a group setting for something as sensitive as
Great question.
Yeah, very good
So,
question.
so the question was, one-on-one is great, but have you ever put people in a group setting? Absolutely not when
no,
it
we
came
didn't.
to investing. There's a couple of reasons why. Money is terrifying. Like, I think us standing up here telling our stories, I think that's the first time we've ever told them, ever. I haven't even really told most of my friends.
our story,
and
so.
I think we both tried to get out of it, and then our partners told us we had to do it anyway.
Yeah, no, that was part
and
of
everyone has these stories. Like, as soon as you start talking about money, literally people were crying and they are very upset. They feel like they've completely failed. It doesn't matter how, like I spoke to a woman once who said, I bought my first shares and then they went down in price and it was such a disaster and I mucked it all up. And I said, did you sell them? And she said, no. And I said, so talk me through how actually you did a great job and you made a wise choice and you followed and by the end of it, she was like, oh my goodness, I did a great thing. And she'd come in almost in tears with embarrassment. And so for us, if you put people in a group situation and you're talking about that when we were doing research and asking for that, what that would have led to is one thing, you would have been swayed. And I think there is that feeling because everyone's so embarrassed, they would feel uncomfortable being honest or they'd feel like they had to pretend they knew more. And that was a huge thing we found. Very early on, people would use a lot of jargon when it came to investing. It didn't actually mean they knew what it meant, and so we deliberately didn't, and we, because we felt very strongly, we'd seen that people felt like they needed to show that they knew what they were talking about. So we definitely didn't. The exception to that is we had a Facebook community group that everyone talked quite openly. We ran what we called Wine and Wealth webinars, which was Kristen and I talking over a glass of wine about money, which threw every stereotype most investors had out the window. And we often congregated very informally at bars around Wellington and Auckland with Hatch investors and just had chats. And by creating that environment in all those different spaces and by us being extremely vulnerable and humans, everyone from customer success to those calls, we kind of created a culture where it was cool to be vulnerable about money, but we couldn't have done it when we were trying to get real research out of people because it was too risky. I have done it in other projects and sometimes it works, but I'm always a bit nervous about it because you get the group think.
The group think, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.